Hello, everyone. Welcome to XT Summit 2022. I am Gautam. I'm a front-end architect, and I've been building enterprise level experiences for last 15 years. And for last 4 years, I've been working on building micro front-end experiences using Polyrepo and Monorepo setups.
Hi everyone, I'm Sourabh. I have been building enterprise apps for the past 9 years now. And recently I started an initiative called Frontend Nachos to share or exchange knowledge and information with anybody who's interested in tech.
Talking about social media. You remember what happened last year on social media?
Oh yeah, how can I forget that? So this is something that I tweeted almost a year back. I said that framework, component, and architecture have got to be the three most exploited terms in the software industry. A lot of people from the community resonated with the thought, but there were two particular concepts in a picture that sort of disagreed with the whole idea, or basically felt excluded. The first one was monorepo. So according to monorepo, being known by many but being understood by few and yet being used by a lot of people also falls in the same category. The second one was micro frontends. So micro frontend says so does being everyone's favorite when it comes to refactoring of old and chunky code bases. At this point, I was almost convinced that I should go back and add these two concepts to my statement. But my friend Gautam over here is a pretty optimistic individual, and that's where he chipped in. So Gautam, do you remember what you said?
Yeah, I do. And I said, hope is something very important. You should not lose it because we have seen over the time things do change and improve for better.
Correct. And I had all the good reasons to believe you because if you look at how monorepo tools have evolved over the course of time, we started off with Lerna back in 2015, and today we are working with TurboRepo. And a lot has changed in the technology landscape in the last 7 years, and all these tools have tried their best to keep up. But you know what they say? 2 is a company, 3 is a crowd. The fourth one adds confusion, and then nobody knows what it is about.
Yeah. And that's, I think, what's exactly happened. And these two statements still hold true because some of our friends, even though they are talking about micro frontend, we thought about, let's talk about Monorepo in this talk.
So this brings us to our today's talk, the Monoverse of Madness, the state of monorepos in 2022. Gautam and I embarked upon a journey to explore monorepos for an upcoming project almost a year ago. And today we stand before you to share our experiences and interpretations of the same. So yes, we were perplexed. We had a lot of options available to us. We had Lerna, we had Yarn Workspaces, NX, TurboRepo. So we did not know how to approach these and where to begin from. So we took a step back and we thought that, you know what, any piece of technology that exists out there exists so that we could solve some problems and achieve something. So we wanted to be very clear about our ultimate goal. So we gave it a thought and we came up with two goals. The first one was pace. Pace basically means that we should be able to reduce the time to market of our product features. We did not want complex dependency resolution algorithms and long CI/CD pipelines to slow us down. We wanted pace, we wanted speed. And the second one was peace. Peace basically refers to the fact that we sought maintainability and manageability in the long term. Let's say you have to add a new project to your monorepo or a new application to your monorepo. There is a lot of work that you need to do in the beginning. You have to set up the project structure, you have to add governance, and you have to set up the build pipelines for integration and deployment. So we wanted our tool to do most of that work so that we could be at peace.
Yeah, and while we were at it, right, one thing that we wanted to be sure of that it does not add on to the developer's cognitive load. We are not adding a long list of things that a developer needs to do while working on a project. And that's why we wanted to keep things simple.
So the next step was, now we know what we want, but in order to succeed with anything in life, you should set your expectations straight. Otherwise, you will feel disappointed in the end. So we decided that we are going to set our expectations right for pace. We broadly categorized our expectations into two categories. The first one was the must-to-haves, the one we could not live without. And the second ones were some, good-to-haves that can help us in some extreme situations.
Yeah, and we started off with computational caching. So let's assume there is a job which runs for a very long time to create some artifact for your project. Now, what happens that if your input has not changed, the output doesn't change. That's a simple functional programming concept. We wanted to apply the same thing to our build system, because if the source has not changed, the build that you are creating doesn't change. So that's why this computational caching helps us achieve the same. So it was something that was in our must-have list.
Then came orchestration and concurrency. We wanted our tool to be intelligent enough to understand how different apps are related to each other and build them in an appropriate sequence. And if two applications are not related to each other, they should be built in parallel. This way, we should be able to make the most of our computational resources, and we should be able to deliver our product features faster.
The other thing that we wanted was the ability to detect the changes in the impacted packages, so that once we know that a certain package has changed, we get to know what is the scope of regression and test accordingly.
The next one was code generation. Like I said earlier, let's say you're working on a Monorepo project and you have applications built on different technologies. For example, Node.js, Angular, Svelte, React. You basically want that all the boilerplate work, which is for setting up a particular project on an application, should be done by your framework or tool of preference. So we wanted a tool that should come with generators that could help us in setting up projects faster.
Yeah. And then let's assume you have n number of steps in your build pipeline. Maybe you are doing bundling. Before bundling, after bundling, you are doing testing, and you are running linting, right? There are some of the tasks that you can do in parallel. And rather than doing it on a single machine, what if you could, you could distribute them, run it in the parallel, and achieve the results faster?
The last one was remote code execution. Let's say your project grew out of proportion and you have a lot of code volume to deal with. You don't want to slow your developers down. If the code is not able to run on their particular system because of any computational limitations, you want your developer to have the capability to take all that to some remote system and run and execute over there. So this is something that we see from a pace point of view.
Yeah, I've seen some of the older projects having a lot of build time because of that.
Right. Then came our expectations for peace. Again, the same kind of drill down was something that we did. We categorized our expectations into must-haves and good-haves. The first one was code sharing. Let's say you're working in an account that has multiple projects, and you have solved a problem which the other teams can benefit from. So we wanted our tool that it should allow us to basically package and ship that particular app or library to other teams so that they can also benefit from that.
The other must-have was around package versioning. So let's assume we have a project which we are currently building using React. Let's assume we are using React 12. 1 or 2 years down the line, we want to upgrade it to a newer version of React. Okay, maybe let's say React 14 comes out by then. So package versioning helps you upgrade your application progressively. So rather than upgrading all your applications in one go, because you may have a single package, you could go and have them upgrade one by one.
Okay, that makes sense. And this brings us to community support. I mean, we all have been at some point in our life stuck at a problem whose solution is not available on Stack Overflow, GitHub threads, any Medium article, or a YouTube video. So we basically wanted our tool of preference to have enough community support so that we do not get stuck in these kind of situations and we are able to take things forward.
And last one was around containerization support. All the applications that we build today are all containerized, and Docker is synonymous to containerization. And having a build tool or a Monorepo tool that gives a good guideline around containerization and give a good support around it is really important these days.
Then came project visibility control. I mean, this is not something that's going to block the execution of a project, but it is still something that, you can put in as a best practices or something, that is a good to have. So let's say you are building an application inside a Monorepo. One of those applications is a Svelte application, which has some web components, and another application is a React application. You do not want your Svelte application to be importing the React library or anything related to it, because that just doesn't make sense. So we wanted, the developer should have the capability to configure rules that can prevent these kind of things from taking place. So possibly reduce the, occurrence of human error.
Yeah, and that actually happened in one of the projects where I saw the Angular dependency being used in a React project because the project was upgrading from Angular to React.
That must have been disastrous.
Yeah. And the last one is around workspace analysis and visualization. So again, even if we have all the packages and dependency identified, it's always great if we can have a visualization so that if a new member joins in the team, let's say 1 year after the project has been created, the person has very less context on the change. If that person makes on one of the components, what all impact will it bring on? This visualization helps that person to identify if they are making a change to a component, what all components in the application gets impacted, and get a tree visualization on that, and able to
the entire dependency tree, basically.
Exactly. And they are able to identify the regression area.
Right. And I can clearly see big and complicated projects benefiting from this. Okay. So now we'll showcase you our final analysis. But before we go ahead and discuss this, I want to state that this is by no means a definitive guide to, refer whether you want to do monorepos or not. Whatever we told you before this, kindly take those points into consideration, contextualize your problem statement or your project's situation, and then basically explore and come to your decision. But yes, you can definitely take this as a starting point. So coming to this particular slide, whatever you see is written as not supported is something that the tool is not able to do at all. Whatever is possible, it means that with some customization and some extension, you are able to achieve that. Supported basically means that everything is natively supported in the tool. So we wanted a lot of native support because we did not want to spend a lot of time in solving custom problems. So given that, in our case, with context to our problem, NX seemed to do a lot of those things, and hence we decided to move forward with NX.
Yeah. And a small disclaimer over here, these tools are getting updated very frequently. Right. So this table do get outdated very frequently. So yeah, if you are trying to leverage something like this, do go ahead, check out the features and build something.
Right.
Yeah. And even though we did our rigorous research and we set our expectations with the piece and pace, we ended up on the dark side of the moon. And let's talk through some of the problems that we encountered while putting the Monorepo architecture into the practice.
Right.
So one of the problems that we encountered was outdated tech standards. So in one of the projects where I was working, we proposed Monorepo solution, and it was outrightly denied by the client that we should not be using it because at an organization level, they had decided they will be following 12 factors app, and it was contradicting the first principle that the 12 factor app proposes. So Sourabh, can you guess what was that first principle?
I think it's one application and one repository.
Exactly. Now think about, we are talking about a single repository containing multiple applications, but there is a decade-old standards which suggests that you should have one repository for one application. Now that's something which is totally in breach of Monorepos, and what we need to do as a standard is upgrade these standards, and at an organization level, till these standards are not updated, at least follow those practices, build those standards, and ensure that we are following the right coding practices.
And maybe be a bit flexible around these things.
Exactly.
Right. The second one that we encountered was execution rigidity. So we decided that we want to use Fastify instead of the default Next.js application server. But when we built our project, we observed that NX was building the next application, but there was no package in context to our custom Fastify server. We were blocked because of this situation. We tried to solve it through multiple ways. We went to Stack Overflow, GitHub threads, Medium blogs, YouTube videos. We even reached out to a lot of our peers, but it seemed that nobody has ever come across a use case like this. So it did impact our project or sprint timelines to a minor extent. So in case you are about to pick up Monorepo and go ahead with it, we would say just see whether you're trying to do something custom or go beyond the defined way these tools kind of work. And if there is one such use case, we will say just do your own due diligence and research.
Yeah. And the next one was around open engagement. So let's say if you want to start a new project on a Monorepo and you choose Cypress to be your tool of choice for end-to-end testing,
which most people do, right?
Yeah, and it's a breeze to set up. Let's say when we picked NX, it was just a few command lines and we had end-to-end testing set up.
Correct.
But let's say if you want to move away from Cypress, the recommended tool set, right? Then there are no generators which are available out of the box. And when we tried to move to webdriver.io, there was no plugin available. So that is one big problem. And the solution to that problem is that we should go and publish such plugins, let's say at an organization level. If an organization has taken a decision to use certain product, then they should go and build that plugin and publish to NPM. And while we were doing this project a year back, we didn't have a platform where we could go and search for those plugins, but I think it's now available on the next website.
Right.
And there are a lot of plugins available, but still there are packages which are not out there. So yeah, great place to start open source development.
Right. So I think as a practice, organizations should be, shipping out what they're building to solve this kind of problems, and different tools which are being managed by different people. They should be promoting these kind of things. Yeah. Okay. So the last one was organizational mindset. And this is something that is quite close to us because we have been there at some point in time. Front-end engineers, or you can say front-end folks, tend to operate in the user interface periphery. But times and things have changed a lot. Right now, it is the era or age of engineers who can take things from end-to-end solution perspective. And for this, I think front-end engineers need to step out of their comfort zone, and organizations also need to get into the mindset and start acknowledging and addressing the challenges that can arise from a front-end perspective. So fortunately, we happen to work in one such organization that is already taking care of this problem. TGA, Top Gun Academy, is our flagship training program for full lifecycle architects. And every year we are, graduating a lot of folks in that area. And we, intend to take this program to the more people in the community in the coming year. But I think this is something that should be done by a lot of organizations out there, so that from an organizational mindset and an industry standard mindset, we all reside on the same page.
And I totally agree with that organizational mindset, Sourabh.
Yeah.
And, even though in our journey, we started up with certain expectation, we ended up with some problems, but eventually Mono Repo solved the problem that it said it would for us. And what we would recommend is, don't be shy, don't be afraid to use a Mono Repo in your solution. Go ahead, try Mono Repos, because unlike monolithic architectures, Mono Repo values relationships.
So thank you so much for joining us today. This was our time, and we hope to connect with you. You know how to reach out to us, and let's have some meaningful conversation around the subject.